I have got 1 o'clock straight up, and we're gonna try to keep on schedule, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Uh, My part of the program is to talk about the market order changes. uh, That was promoted as far as calling a hearing. We went through the hearing process, then the proposed changes were publicized, and they came back and reviewed uh, those discussions, and a final decision was forwarded, and dairymen had the opportunity to vote. And in fact, they passed the new changes. Uh, it was interesting. This was an all or nothing. You either voted to pass the changes, or if you voted no, it was we did not have a market order for that area. So it's kind of an interesting process. Uh, Nearly 60 days of discussion out there at Carmel, Indiana. And like I said, it taught a lot of us a lot of things about how this works. It had been over 20 years since changes had been made. One of the things I want always to do, because I don't think everybody fully understands what our market orders are and where they are at as far as in our country. You can see this map. There's 11 orders. The newest one is California. The white spots on this map do not have a federal market order, and they don't benefit through the system. Although obviously they have milk being produced, so they are in fact doing some of the similar things. They just don't have the benefits as far as transparency that we can guarantee through the federal market order system. And if you look at, for instance, the lower half of Idaho and Montana and compare it to the Pacific Northwest market order, at the end of the day, they look very similar. Nevada looks very similar to California. Uh, the unordered parts of North and South Dakota look a lot like the upper Midwest and the Central. So they seem to find a market price that works for them even without the market order. If you've seen me present on milk marketing, you've seen this slide. I've used it for several years. I think it does the best job of giving you a real glimpse at the 3 C's of the milk market order pricing: commodity, component, and class. We know that beginning of the month, we get a announcement, and that considers the advanced butterfat pricing, the class 3 and 4 pricing factor, and advanced class 4 skim milk pricing. And then if you follow those lines over, you see that those affect class 1 and class 2, which is fluid milk and a soft ice cream, heavy cream, cottage cheese. At the end of the month, we have surveyed processors for cheese price, butter price, dry whey price, and non-fat dry milk price. And you can follow that over and see how that prices the components. Cheese price, butter price affect protein price. Protein price then affects our class 3, which is our cheese class. And you can follow over and see how those, you know, are combined in the formulas to price our class 3, class 4, and in essence, all of the milk that we sell in this country. Like I say, I like this slide. I think it helps a very complicated system become a little more understandable. We're going to look at the 5 market order changes that I believe will affect producers' pocketbooks the most, and will actually make the most changes in the milk pricing system. And that's the composition factors, the commodity products, class 3 and 4 formula factors, the base class 1 skim milk price, and the class 1 differentials. When we look at a little background, we've known that the skim milk price is based on the true protein, other solids, and non-fat solids. And as you look there, what we had since 2000 was true protein at 3.1, and the new base is 3.3. We moved up the other solids and non-fat solids from 5.9 to 6.0, and from 9.0 to 9.3. Now, all of those set the base of what you're being paid for on that skim milk price. There were 2 things that were discussed, and the producers who participated in the hearing really wanted to see an annual update for this. And if you think about it, it would make sense from the producer's point of view. We're not selling the same composition milk today that we sold 10 years or 20 years ago. And with the genetics we have and the feeding regimes we have, it's likely that it's going to continue to change. So the producer said, let's review this annually and make adjustments. And that was not brought to a vote. What was brought to the vote is the 6-month implementation lag. If you think about the time frame that is happening, what happens from about March 1 to the middle of June? This happens since we've had dairy cows. We have a spring flush, which changes the market. You know, we get more milk, to seasonality of the composition. So the processors said, you know, there's already changes going on in the market because of spring flush. If we add another change, it'd just be too hard to explain. And so that lag was created so they would, you know, be able to handle the changes in steps. These new factors, I guess the bottom line is, will ensure a fair representation of the product cost and composition levels for our processors. When we talk about the commodity products that are evaluated, the big one that is in the change was we've always used 500-pound barrels and 40-pound cheddar blocks as a basis for pricing. Now, barrels are what are soft cheeses. We make the dips, the paste, we make Velveeta. We dry that and make the cheese on the Cheetos. So that's a different product than the 40-pound barrel or 40-pound blocks, which is a sliced cheese and block cheese that go on hamburgers. And then there was no proposed changes for butter, non-fat dry milk, or the dry whey servings. What I want you to do is look at this slide and then think about what class of cheese that Americans consume an awful lot of, but isn't represented here. Now think about, we eat a lot of pizza, and that has the Italian-based cheeses on the top of it and in that. And those Italian cheeses are not used in our pricing structure. And it wasn't truly part of the discussion during the hearings. We're going to talk about the class 3 and 4 formula factors and give a little background here. We've always had make allowances, and they're the things that we processors use to cover the cost of converting raw milk into the surveyed products. And they've been part of the market order forever. We've also had a butterfat recovery, which represents the amount of butterfat captured during cheese making. The third thing is the farm to plant shrinkage, about 0.25%. And you think about it, no matter how good we are, there's always milk that drops out of the tank. When they pump off a tanker, there's always milk. If you ever had a chance to look at the inside of a tanker, there's that sheen, that's butterfat that's stuck to that cold stainless steel. And so that's been part, it doesn't sound like much when you say 0.25%, but we haul a lot of milk. So that adds up. Then the non-fat of solids yield, that represents the pounds of non-fat dry milk that can be made from 1 pound of non-fat solids in raw milk. And it's always been about 0.99. And in fact, that part was kept the same. The butterfat recovery was increased because we are a bit more efficient now on our cheese making. So there's 91% up from 90%. What's really, I think, tells the tale for dairy producers is the cheese make was always around 20 cents, and it's been moved up to 25 cents. The butter make allowance was 17 cents, it's now been moved up to 23. The non-fat dry milk make allowance was 17 cents, is now 24. And the dry weight make allowance was 20 cents and now is 27 cents. So that's the dollars that processors will collect to make those products. Now, think about that. That's got to come from someplace. It comes out of the producer's milk check. Our class 1 mover, or the base class skim milk price, it had been the higher of, and the prices for the month in place through 2019. At industry's request, Congress mandated the average of plus 74 cents, and that was implemented in May of 2019. In the discussions since at the hearing, we went back to the higher of class 1 milk, and because we have a new product in the marketplace, we had to create some kind of adjustment for our extended shelf life products. When we do this live, I always ask, has anybody drank an extended shelf life product? And of course, everybody's hand goes up. This is an ultra pasteurized product. They ship it without benefit of cooling, goes to warehouse, they ship it to the grocery store, all of which don't have to be chilled until they put it into display. And the reality, not all the grocery stores, but they found that when people pick up a carton of milk, they want it cold. Although you see some grocery stores that have it as a room temperature product. So we created this extended shelf life adjustment because we know there's more expense because the pasteurization is different. And I want to focus on the ESL adjustment. No matter what system or what product, if you are using ELS, you are involved with this. Handlers cannot elect or opt out. And if they're marketing that product, there's much more robust audit process that the market order auditors, because it does create more dollars and they want to make sure that it's handled the right way. And the fact is, they call it remedies for misreporting. It's pretty severe hand slaps if a processor is caught fudging those numbers. Our class 1 and class 2 differentials, we've always had this system where we know we have to get milk to the location that processes fluid milk. Processes were near population centers, not necessarily where it was conducive to producing milk and having farms. And for several decades, it's been $1.60 per hundredweight to get that milk to those processors. And in fact, they always have had a county-specific location value. And that, again, was to incentivize getting milk to the class 1 and class 2 market. These were implemented in 2000. The changes kept the $1.60 base differential, but they updated the location specific class 1 values. There was no change in the class 2 differential. It's still 70 cents a hundred. Now, I know this is a very cluttered map and I apologize, but each county that has cattle producing milk, in fact, has a dollar value assigned to it. And the farther you are from your processor, the more dollars are there. As low as $2.40 to almost $9. So it's significant, and these changes for some processors will make a big dollar difference. Just to go over quick, the milk composition factors, we've increased the protein, other solids, non-fat solids. We've removed the 500-pound barrels from the reporting program and retained only the 40-pound block for cheddar cheese prices. Class 3 and 4 formula factors, and we focused on the make allowances and the increase. They also increased the butterfat recovery factor, the base class 1 skim milk. They reinstated the higher of pricing mechanism for class 1, replacing the average plus 74 cents. And because of the new extended shelf life products, they've created an adjustment for that. The class 1 and 2 differentials, we kept class 2 at 70 cents, retained $1.60 for class 1, and then adjusted location specific values for each marketplace. Now, this is going to affect some of our market orders differently. If you look at this chart, compliments of the Farm Bureau that he did that as we were going through the hearings. I think it's still very, very close to accurate. And they used some annual average information. If you look across where the green bars are, the Northeast Appalachian, Florida, Mideast, those are high fluid markets. And they're going to probably do a little better than what they had in the past. If you look at those that are either a cheese market or an ice cream market, California is an ice cream market, we probably won't do quite as well. And that's just by virtue of having to adjust how these prices are paid. If we look at this chart, this is done with dynamic modeling and predicts from 2024 to 2028. And I'm going to caveat this by saying, if all else stays the same, this would predict that class 1's gonna do pretty well. Class 2 to begin. The first couple of years, maybe not so much, but once you get 2027, probably see some increases. You move to the right and you look at class 3 and class 4, probably will see some softening. And we really won't see any improvement until we get the last quarter of 27 and into 28. And still we won't see much of a benefit. Now let's go back to my first statement. This is if all else stays the same. Well, let's think about a word we've heard a lot in the last 10 days, tariffs. Tariffs haven't stayed the same. And it looks like they're going to continue come April 2nd. We're going to see some even more changes. So that's not going to be the same. If you charge some of your biggest buyer of dairy products 25% to cross the border, that may affect how much they buy, or it may affect the tariff that they charge for products that are coming into the United States. The next thing I think we got to at least think about is interest rates. If you look at interest rates, they're not going to stay the same. We're seeing some shift to higher interest rates, especially in the EU and some of the other major milk producing countries. So that's a change. Dr. Jordan talked about the avian influenza in dairy. Obviously a change. The fact we've had a second incident probably may or may not throw another number into the mix. Then the other thing is cow numbers. By now, everybody's heard that, there was a pot load of heifers, about $4,250 up at Pipestone. But last week, when they made the numbers announcement, and we said, okay, we have 10,000 more cows than we did last month. We've got 41,000 more cows than we did a year ago. And we produced 0.1% more milk. Now, get your head around this. Heifers are expensive. There's not many of them. And yet we have more cows marketing. So it's not hard to put this together and say, okay, we're not slaughtering nearly as many cows as we have traditionally. And that's exactly the reason why we're seeing the cow numbers increase, even though there's fewer heifers being brought into the empty stalls. Now, as far as production, most of us understand that these third, fourth, fifth parity cows produce more milk than a first lactation cow. So that kind of helps us explain why we've got a little more milk. The issue is, before this, we slaughtered Betsy with a high cell count, Gertrude, who was lame all the time, and Eleanor, who took a swat at us every time she came into the parlor. So those problem cows were gone. Now we've got cows who, okay, we had to breed her 2 extra services, but she's still milking 80 pounds and she's staying in the milking lineup that may not have been the case a year ago. So, all else isn't the same. So is our dynamic modeling meaningful? Probably, but it sure wouldn't take much of a shift to make these numbers look a lot different. Okay, we've got some, may have some questions, and kind of up to the, got about 2 more minutes. So if there's questions, I'd be more than happy to take them.